So the North Carolina Japan Center is very, very honored to have the opportunity to be interviewing Dr. Yoko Ishikura on the topic of diversity, equity, and inclusion in Japan. And I just wanted to thank you, first of all, Dr. Ishikura, for making time in your extremely busy schedule. I've read quite a few of your articles, most recently for the Japan Times, and I was hoping I might hand the ball off to you to tell us a little bit about yourself and your extraordinary background and expertise.
Sure. Thank you very much for the opportunity, Jonathan. It's a great pleasure for me to address this group. And the only time that I spent in North Carolina is that my roommate at University of Virginia Darden School was from North Carolina. So I visited her house over Christmas or some holidays. So that's what I know. But I've been there once or twice. So it's not, I haven't had any opportunity to visit there recently, but it's not that far away. So that was what it was.
We'd love to welcome you back once everything is safe again.
Sure, yeah. So let me talk a little bit about what I do right now and my background a little bit. Right now, I am a Professor Emeritus of Hitotsubashi University in Tokyo, but it's just a name. So I'm essentially a freelancer, and I don't belong to any organization because that's, I think, is the way to work in the future. And I wanted to make sure that people are aware that you can do that as well, because in Japan, the employment seems to be dominated by full-time, working for one company, stay there forever kind of thing. So I said, well, with this technology and all these things, you can do whatever you want if you want to, but you need to have some skills and things. So I don't belong to any organization. I'm on the board of 3 companies in Japan, which I enjoy. And sometimes it's quite difficult right now because of COVID and things like that. And I don't teach at the university or the graduate school per se on regular basis because I'm no longer there. And I'm asked to do some seminars and talks by the companies or by the organizations or by the publishing company and so forth. So I do that. And I also host my own sort of workshop series, and it is called SINCA. It's sharing creative and innovative and creative actions. And we do it, right now we're doing it online. We used to do it in Rio. And that is after I hosted Davos Experience in Tokyo. That's the workshop series, which we did for 5 years. And that's a workshop type of things where everybody gets together, speak in English, pick any topic of interest at that point. And sometimes we invited guests, and we have a small group breakout sessions, and we report back, and we did networking. But after I did it for 5 years and 60 times, because we did it every month, I said it's about time to do something else. So I decided to discontinue, went on to SINCA series, which I have done since September 2018. And the same kind of idea, and we get together, we invite guests, and sometimes we do like food tech and some other interesting, like media and fake news and things like that as well, whatever is current, or G20. And then we get together, and everything is done in English, because I believe that the English capability is a must today to become a business people, or to be anybody right now, because there's so much available in English. And yet the communication capability of the English of the Japanese people are far behind of any Asian countries. And I think we're getting worse. And one of the reasons is that they don't have that many opportunities to communicate in English. And people, what I see more of an issue is that they don't have an opportunity to express their own views and argue back and forth because they don't want to take a risk. And if you do, you may be evaluated, you may be perceived as a troublemaker or crazy or whatever. So I wanted to provide the opportunity where you can express your view, you can share, you can express your view, share ideas, and discuss to come up with anything better in a very risk-free environment. And that's what I've been doing. As a matter of fact, this coming Sunday, we're going to do auction. Try to identify your hidden talent and see whether that's marketable or not. So
that sounds like
yeah,
a good mixture of a lot of fun and a little bit of anxiety.
Yeah.
To try to figure out.
We have tried it before, but it was much more of the real. So this time we're going to do it online. So we have to find out whether that works or not. But the reason why I wanted to do that is employment, work style has been changing dramatically. So you really need to figure out what you're going to do with your lifestyle as well as work in employment. And one way of doing it is that you may want to find out, what your strengths are, even though that may not be perceived as such, according to the traditional objective criteria. So, but if you're just thinking about it, you'll never get anywhere. So I said, well, let's see whether anybody would buy or not. So that's what we're trying to do. So that's
Fantastic.
I do all sorts of things which is current in a way, and which can bring people, and which I can provide some opportunities for people. And interesting thing about this online thing is that because it's online, it's not real. It used to be like real, and we did it at this place, that place. We did networking, and we had food and drinks, which was fun. But since we cannot do it, we are doing it online, which means that people join from anywhere in the world. So that's a very interesting phenomenon. And it turns out we have no idea where they are from, but it turned out because we do everything in English,
Sure.
so they can just join, and they can share their experiences and views and things like that. So.
And that touches on one of your the things that I believe you do consulting in is global talent, right? And
yes,
cultivating
yes.
that talent.
Yeah. Yes.
And I think that that's a really, really important thing. That there are a lot of us, that especially when I was younger and I had just graduated college, trying to figure out how do I make the best version of myself to be applicable in as many places around the world as possible.
Right.
And you talked about the English being the international language, for better or for worse, and that that perhaps the Japanese government could do more to try to facilitate that. I was part of the JET program. I got to see some of those things firsthand. But at the same time, I think from our perspective as Americans, on this side of the Pacific, is we try, or I am a part of, I suppose, a cadre of people who want to go against that old axiom or joke about, what do you call someone who speaks two languages, bilingual? What do you call someone who speaks one language, American? And so we also have to make the effort to go beyond English. Right. But we were talking before about global talent, and connected to that is the topic where you've certainly written quite a bit. I know that is incorporated into your workshops as well. Diversity. And so I guess I can lead with this. We all kind of have this feeling of diversity is good. We want diversity.
Yeah.
Speaking from a business perspective, and looking at competitiveness, right? Looking for a competitive advantage. Why do we want diversity?
Yeah, well, I think the one key factor is that we need, in order to stay competitive, you need to be innovative all the time. You need to bring about innovation one after another, not just once. And in order to come up with the new ideas, you need different groups of people, different kinds of people who think in a different way. So if you have a group of people, same age, same nationality, same background, and same thinking, you don't need them. All you need is one or two. So we need to have different kinds of people, whether that's gender, that's nationality, that's expertise, and so that's the driving force. And as you know, the Japan or Japanese corporations, which used to be very innovative, come up with a lot of innovative ideas, they are now sort of behind in terms of coming up with the innovative ideas. And I think it's partly because we don't have diversity. And in the sense that I think the Abe administration has really tried to make the corporate board much more open and things like that. And that has worked to some extent, but it's still on the way. And so that's diversity is important for innovation. And it's not, even though you have so many different people, you cannot guarantee new ideas will come up. But it's definitely is better than the same group of people getting together, talking about the same thing over and over and over again. So that's where the diversity is important. And getting back to okay. And so if you know the language and can communicate with the people, or can access the information anywhere in the world, and if you compare the information written in English and Japanese, I don't care about the US or whatever, it's no comparison, and particularly so for technology, I heard. And technology is advancing so fast, so if you wait until it is translated in Japanese, you're late. So it's even more critical. And so you really need to have at least different medium or means to be exposed to different kinds of information, different kinds of culture, different kinds of way of thinking. And I think that language plays a very important role. Simply, well, partly because Japanese, you don't find too many people who speak Japanese in the whole world. So you're much better off with English. And English is much more of a global language than Japanese, for sure. It may be replaced by Chinese, or it may be replaced by something else later on. But right now, as of now, most of the leaders in any field can communicate in English. So if you can communicate in English, you get an access, you get exposed to so many different things.
Thinking about that in terms of, what you're talking about in terms of change, innovation. I worked for a bit, in the JET program, but after I went to business school and then entered as Shinyushain, right, as a new employee at Fujitsu. Yes. In Tokyo. I think I saw a lot of the same things that you're talking about. Fujitsu is a wonderful company. It's the #1 ICT company in Japan, but it is a large traditional Japanese company. Mm-hmm. And that was very critical for me to understand how Japanese business, so to speak, is done, at least domestically. And then I also got to learn a little bit about how a traditional or a very large Japanese company approaches international business in the high performance computing sector, at least. But, one of the things that you're talking about with bringing in, really encouraging diversity, bringing in people from many different backgrounds to talk about things and to come up with hopefully new ideas is, I think, fantastic. And I hope that that's the direction it's going. But we also know the Japanese phrase of the derukugi wa utareru, right? The nail that sticks up is hammered down. And I was able to see this to a certain degree, and not just at, to be fair at Fujitsu, but in other places where, we can see in a very broad way, Japan has, it's a consensus-based culture, especially when making decisions. And so I would see, people coming up with very innovative ideas. disruptive ideas.
Mm.
And perhaps those ideas were not adopted in the end because there were perhaps a few people at the level of manager or subsequent managers who were looking at, usually in Japan, we would see a sheet like ringisho, which
Mm-hmm.
is something like a summary of the idea, and then the
Mm.
different people who need to sign off on that idea. It takes time. And sometimes we can see that the people who are signing off on it might have the same kind of thinking.
Mm.
How do you think that we can start seeing this kind of adoption of innovativeness and diversity in larger companies in Japan? Do you think it's going to be, as I probably think, it's going to be a slower change? Or is there a way that the central government can help to scoot that along?
There are some things that the government may be able to do, but the private sector is the one who is competing on the global market right now, whether you like it or not. So if they are not successful, they're going to go under. And with COVID-19, I think it become even more significant. Unless you're successful, unless you're competitive, you're going to go under very, very easily because people do not buy your stuff and do not value your service and things. So if you don't come up with the new ideas, you're going to be, you're doomed, essentially. And I think we have been doomed to some extent, the Japanese corporations, if you take a look at overall trend. But I think the COVID-19 is a great, great opportunity that people, oh, okay, we really cannot go on like this anymore. And since we were forced to work from home and we had to try something new, and I think that a lot of large companies are reducing the office space because all of a sudden they realized we don't need that many space because people can work from home. And large corporations in particular, I think there is an issue with the small and medium-sized companies because they don't have an infrastructure. But besides that, and all of a sudden, everybody has to work from home. Everybody has to try online meetings. And they thought, well, we live on this face-to-face, a face-to-face culture. Meetings have to be face-to-face. And all of a sudden, we were forced to do something different. And many people have actually experienced that. And I think that will be a very good trigger point if we can make the best of it. What I'm afraid is if people go back and say, oh, okay, the COVID-19 seems to be contained and controlled, particularly in Japan, so we can go back. And so I strongly argue that these old days are never going to come back. So you have to start doing something new. And this is such a great opportunity. You need some kind of shock. And I think we are experiencing that. So, and even though we're talking about large corporations, some large corporations are still going back to the good old days. And some are like, going very quickly and said, well, this is how we're going to work. And that opens up a very good opportunity of hiring anybody from the world because you are not, restricted by the location and physical. The same thing goes true with the Japanese. If you want to work for the organization headquarters somewhere else, you can still do it in Japan. And like, some of the IT companies, some people just ask or even force people don't come to the office. They can work from anywhere. That opens up so much opportunities. And so I think we really can make the best of all these opportunities by coming with the totally different idea of, okay, given what we have, given what we can do, what would be the best way to stay competitive? And you just don't follow the traditional way of thinking. If you try to do conventional way of thinking, you're dead. I think you really are.
You know, and I want to underline this for the people who are watching this video who have perhaps not, not experienced living and working in Japan and being immersed in the culture. I really want to underline what you're saying about needing a catalyst for change, because change happens, at least in my experience, Japan, very slowly. And in industries and sectors where innovation is even more important, like technology, being a first mover is incredibly important. If you're seeing the development of, let's say, a new CPU going into a server, you don't want your company being the third or fourth company that adopts it.
Right.
So change and pivoting has to be very agile. But we also see traditionally in Japanese companies that change has to be approved and consensus has to be made. This kind of nemawashi, right, consensus building, that's very deeply rooted in the culture. But I think what you're saying is absolutely correct, that if we have a catalyst and we can take advantage of it to really change the way that business is done, then I agree with you that would be a wonderful way for Japan to really surge ahead into this new world that we all have been thrown into from this pandemic. So the other thing too that I'd like to talk about is sorry, go ahead, please.
Sorry. No, go ahead. I think it depends upon the leaders of the organization. Leaders play a significant role. And the middle management are the ones who usually resist the big change, because they would like to continue and they would like to have sort of certain career, and they have worked so far, so why not continue this? But the top management is very much aware of what's going on in the world. Most of them, let's put it that way. And they know that they're responsible for the organization and the people who work there, including the families. So there are this incredible, huge responsibility to make sure that the organization stays competitive and successful. And they know what's going on in the rest of the world. So if they make a very clear decision, and I think some of them really do, and then push the organization, you really can change.
I think, and that's a great point. The leaders engender, I was trying to flip through my notes. There is something that I learned recently talking with YKK that was fantastic, about leaders driving behavior. And then that behavior turning into the corporate culture, right? And that can change. It can be,
yes,
as long as the leadership is showing it, right? And it can engender that change all the way down.
Yes.
One thing recently, I have to give Fujitsu credit. I mean, I think I saw the article not too long ago, how they cut their presence at Shiodome City Center, I think by, it was like 50%, something like that. And that's going to be a permanent change from what I understand,
Yes.
Telework was just starting when I left. And apparently it's, by necessity, become the standard. So I was very happy to see that they were able to make that change fairly quickly and without too much trouble, but also making that bigger move, saying we're going to have less of a presence at headquarters, physical presence. The other thing that I wanted to talk about is the fact the topic of Japan as an aging society. And this has been discussed for years and years and years. And as an offshoot of that, this returning discussion of immigration, right, to replace an aging workforce. And the fact that, of course, one of the biggest reasons of an aging Japan is the low birth rate. And when I'm hearing all these discussions about immigration, I don't think that immigration is a new topic in Japan. Especially with Latin American countries, it's a very long history, the connection between Japan and Latin American countries in terms of immigration. What do you feel the role of immigration is going to play in helping this problem, Or do you think that perhaps, as I'm starting to kind of think that with this remote work situation, of course, there's some work that is actual physical work, but more of the the work that's centered around IP and things like that. Do you think immigration is going to have that big of an impact, or is it going to be more of what we're seeing right now with remote work, and you can really work from anywhere in the world?
I'm not going to respond directly to that, but I think immigration used to be a no-no word. We just don't talk about the immigration. And I remember I was a member of that government committee, and we were essentially talking about how quickly the population is declining. So we need some people, and we try to make the case for the immigration, but we have to be super, super careful. But that days are over. I think people realize that we need more people, and immigration or the high skilled or low skilled people we're going to need. And we also do have the technology, robotics, and things like that helps. And we also are trying to make people older than 65 to work longer. And I think that makes sense because we have, I think our life expectancy is 80 something. And so when I give a seminar, I said, well, you retire at 60 or 65, what are you going to do the rest of 20 years? You have to figure out what to do. So you have to make sure that you do have something to do. And work gives you an identity to some extent, and work gives you an opportunity to get connected, to keep connected with the rest of the world, which is very important. And so, I mean, we can ask, not everybody probably, but those who want to work are able to work. And I think that's the direction that government is trying to lead the private sector, and private sector is doing some of that. The important thing, though, is that if we cut everything by age, we have so many people at different area or different expertise. Some 70-year-old, some 80-year-old is still so lively, as full of vitality, full of motivation, but some of the 60-year-old are dead, sort of, and they don't have too much to do, and they're not motivated. So we can't really cut everything by age. So I argued like age-free society because we try to do everything by age. And getting back to the immigration, and I think that's based upon the shortage of workforce. And I think there are several options in addition to immigration, such as I mentioned, work from anywhere. But in order to do that, the companies have to change their recruiting procedure and employment, which is a big thing in itself. How do we, judge the people from all over the world? How do we specify this job? And how do we evaluate their output and things like that? So that's in itself is quite an task. At the same time, I don't think we were able to not having any immigration. We need to have an immigration policy. I think Japan is one of the few countries which has no immigration policy per se. And I think that stays, that is still true. And we have quite a few people from like Asia and so forth. And yet we act as if there is no immigration issue. But at the same time, I think we need to, that will be one of the things which we might promote diversity, because some of the Asian people have difficulty because they are more or less excluded, quote unquote. They can't rent the place, they cannot get this thing or that, or get the bank account or things like that. So those are the things that we need to change to make the society much more inclusive and capitalize on diversity. So immigration is like, nationality as one measure of diversity. And I think we really need to work on the specifics what kind of job, what kind of skills we need, what kind of, and I don't think it's necessarily high skills per se. We need some low skilled workers as well. So how do we deal with all these things? And that is not a very easy task. And that requires a lot of things. And, but I don't think we'll be able to do without immigration. Let's put it that way.
Thank you. No, I think this is a topic that is going to become larger and larger as, you know, and it's probably the next 10 years, next 15 years is going to become very critical. One of the things you're talking about, people that perhaps have, I mean, and it's important to state for people who don't know, a lot of companies in Japan have a mandatory retirement age. And sometimes they're hired back as kind of consultants or you know, something to that degree, or on contract, usually not making as much in salary as they were when they were a full employee. One of the things that I think is going to be very difficult to change, I want to see it change, is evaluation by Japanese companies for employees in a general sense, based upon output and based upon expertise. And there's many things, but you know, I think right now it might be fair to say that a lot of Japanese still have the mindset of you enter a company, like you said, right out of college or whatever, and you expect to work for that company your whole life. And there's sort of a contractual obligation between the employee and the company for that. That's not an alien concept to Americans. That's how many companies were post-war and before the war. When we, I guess, moved away from that culturally to be more focused on what is the job this person's doing and what are the expectations. So I think that those are things that are also going to be, have to be very focused upon. And the other thing I wanted to talk about a little bit with you is, you know, the women in the workforce in Japan. You know, this has been a subject that you know, there's only so much that I can, being a male, really understand. I can read as much as I can. I can witness things in the workplace when I was in Japan. But I wanted to talk to you a little bit about that topic. I mean, Abe, you know, Prime Minister Abe, the previous prime minister, had, you know, women economics. And so one of our friends of the Japan Center, her name is Jessica Cork. She's the vice president of community engagement and corporate communications at YKK Americas. And she sent a really great question to ask you. So I'm just summarizing here. Many media outlets in the US have been reporting on, you know, the September job report, which showed that women are leaving the workforce at 4 times the rate as men. This coincides with the release of the 2020 Women in the Workplace study, which showed that 1 in 4 women are contemplating downshifting their careers or leaving the workforce completely. And with daycares and schools closed and children home, the boundaries between work and home become blurred. And it seems that women are disproportionately affected by that, and they're having high rates of burnout. How are women in Japan facing the same issue? And what do you think could be done to prevent the current situation from really erasing the hard-fought gains that women have made in the workplace in Japan over the past few years?
I think the similar things are going on here. And it's partly, I'm not really sure whether that's based upon gender or the type of work, because women tend to work not full-time, quote unquote, regular workers, and so they are sort of temporary. They are labeled as temporary workers, whatever they call, and so I think there are quite a few people who are let go because we can't fire people, and that's one of it, and so another is that the sector which has been affected very much, hardly, like retail and all these things, are the ones where a lot of women work. So, and they are the ones who lose the job. And so in the sense that women are affected much more than men is very true in Japan as well. I'm not quite sure about the exact numbers per se. But whatever happens, what it is that when the business is doing very well, they do a lot of new things, like including, incorporating new people, including hiring new people and so forth, and doing all sorts of innovative programs. But whenever their survival is in the question, these are the people who let go first. These are the things that are cut, reduced. And I think in that sense, the women are what, in a way, that has been that has suffered. And on top of that, the kids are home, and we have daycare, and well, kids, still now go to school and so forth, but still, women do take a disproportionate amount of housework at home, including kids. So that means, if you want to work at the same time, do do housework, it's a big thing for women. What's good about the COVID-19 is because everybody was at home, and so everybody was like going crazy. But at the same time, I hear that the fathers spent more time with the family. So they have little more sort of glimpse of what the family life is like. They used to be gone, to the office, and they have no idea what their kids are doing, on weekdays and so forth. But so that may shift a little bit of the mentality. But when it comes, most of the cases, the economics play a significant role. So in that sense, I think women are the ones who are losing in this situation. And I'm not really sure what's the cause of that, but the suicide rate is much, much higher for women in the past several months compared with men. And that's, so they may be sort of much more stressed out. And I mean, our houses are not that big. So if everybody is home, and if you have to take care of everything, that's quite a bit.
That, and touching upon that, especially during the pandemic, what you said, everyone being at home, fathers, or partners in a marriage, seeing what's happening at home, right? I think is obviously very, from the degree of understanding how we should be working together in an equal way, from families, I think it's a very positive thing. But with the pandemic aside, what do you think of former Prime Minister Abe's women economics? I mean, has it worked? This is something that, or is it positive? This is something that Domoto-san, Yoshi Domoto, he's the executive director at the Japan America Society of Georgia. He was asking about this too. Is there were all of these arrows, right? That these so-called arrows of Prime Minister Abe's plan in women economics. More availability of daycare, after school, care, encouraging the private sector to promote more women. This is something that I saw when I was in Japan. There were not too many female managers. And why? What's going on? Expanding child leave benefits, promoting more women in government, right? Now Prime Minister Abe's, his time in that office has come to a close. What can we say in a general way about women economics from his plan?
I think he tried, and he did promote with a variety of means. He made a big statement or a big speech at the UN and World Economic Forum and so forth, and that's been reported in Japan as well. And we did quite a few things that big conferences and things. But when it comes to the reality, and it really have not made that much of an impact, I would say. And it's partly because, the companies want to hire or want to promote, but they don't have a pipeline. That's what they say, of women. So the first tier is sort of gone, and they are promoted to be whatever, managers, but they didn't develop enough people who could fill out that role in the next generation. And I think it's also related to the evaluation system. Unless the evaluation system changes, and unless you are evaluated by the output rather than the time at the office and face time and so forth, there's just no way that, even though you say, okay, we need so and so and so women managers, but how do you do that? So I think we have much bigger issue than just womenomics. We're talking about employment, recruiting, how do we evaluate people, what kind of people we want to keep for the competitiveness. We have so much issues which are so outdated. And I think that's part of the reason the companies are suffering. And they are now in the process of some companies are trying to do something about it, because all of a sudden they realize they can't hire good people from all over the world. And if you are particularly in the technology area, we have such a shortage of people who could do decision science and things like that. And so what do you do in order to survive and prosper and stay competitive? You need these people. And unless you have this global HR kind of system, wherever you are, whatever your nationality is, this is how you evaluate it. You can't hire people. There's so many opportunities elsewhere. So I think that's a much bigger issue. And that's not just related to women per se.
And I do want to expand our conversation to also include, and this can get into some uncomfortable territory, but this is something we really need to talk about, not just in Japan, but everywhere, but focused on Japan just for the moment. Race, right, in Japan is something that not a lot of people talk about. I was very fortunate to speak with Ranzo, who's the head of the Black Experience Japan, wonderful gentleman, a few months ago. What does it mean to be Japanese in terms of being accepted by society?
When it comes to, and yet the fact that you look like Japanese plays a significant role. Let's put it that way. So, and so whether you are accepted or not, I think you may come in, that's the same thing, not necessarily related to nationality. If you work for the company and if you're recruited from somewhere else, you are sometimes we have this us versus you, them kind of things in any organization. If you hire a lot of people with necessary skills now from outside, there's always this sort of tension between those people who have been there and the outside people. And outside people tend to have not necessarily, but different sets of skills which we need. So there's always this tension of what are they doing? And that requires quite a bit of effort by the leaders as well as the system or the process. No question about that. The same thing was true with gender, but in the same way, and what kind of background you have. What I am sort of hoping, and what I see today, is that particularly in the sports area, like tennis, Naomi Osaka, and we have some 100-meter, race. I think there are some, who are Japanese, but who don't look Japanese. Let's put it that way, according to the traditional way of. But they
not fully looking Japanese. Yes,
yeah,
I understand what you mean. Yep.
Yeah. So, but they represent our country. So I think that really may change the notion, the perception of what we mean by Japanese for so many people, because we cheer for them, at the Olympics and things. We're happy if, they win. And they still have a little bit of a bashing here and there. But I think that may be, we never had anything like that before, I don't think, who really look not typically Japanese representing the country. We had some from other countries, but we really didn't make it a big deal. So that may change a little bit of a perception of us. And we have, if you are, and this is the distinction between the big cities and the rural area. Big cities like in Tokyo, you see so many people. You know, if you go to the convenience stores and if you see their name tag, some of them are from China or Korea or whatever. It's not the Japanese name, but you don't really care. But if you go to the rural areas, that's a different story. And it's not, we were talking about, you know, whether we can move some of the people from big cities to the local area. But local rural areas tend to be much more exclusive, not quite as receptive, whether you are other nationality or from the city. So that's a little bit different story.
You know, one thing that struck me about what you're saying too is that, of course, you'll go into some place like a Lawson's, a 7-Eleven, you'll see the cashier and they speak in many cases perfect Japanese.
Mm-hmm.
What I didn't see in Japan were those people, right? And some of them who speak Japanese as their mother language in roles of leadership. And what I'm hoping is that is changing, that the need for inclusion of people who are born and raised in Japan, just as any person who would say that they're Japanese, are treated the same way and celebrated for perhaps a different heritage, so to speak. If their family came from, you know, Africa, or, you know, like, you know, the continent of Africa or someplace else. And this again is a subject that is especially difficult for someone who did not grow up in Japan and or was born and grew up in Japan like me. But I've certainly worked with people, dear colleagues and friends, who were born and raised in Japan, but like you said, look different. And for that reason have been their entire lives treated differently. They've been treated like, in many cases, gaijin, right? Gaikokujin, foreigners, which literally means in Japanese outside or outside country person.
Yeah.
Right? Very much us and other. Do you think that really is moving in the right direction? I mean, you have, of course, a much you know, clearer vision. I worked in basically one company in Japan, but you've had so many experiences. Are you seeing that more in recent years?
I think
Go ahead, please.
I think it depends upon the companies and the need, how much of the need they see and they feel. And some companies are very much, because if they want to be global, you need different kinds of people. So you're almost forced to have all those people. And even though there's this us versus them kind of mentality at the beginning, you know, you have to work together to work to make something happen. So in that sense, I think we are some companies are going to that direction. But as I said earlier, whenever companies are sort of at crunch, you know, much more interested in survival, they forget about all those things. And the same thing was true as I heard about this SDGs. A lot of companies were so excited about the SDGs, but when the COVID-19 took place, those who were just doing it for fashion with the badge, they just left, essentially. So same thing was true when whether you are committed and dedicated to the original objective of why we are doing what we are doing, and make sure that you follow through no matter what happens, I think it's the test for the companies, if we are talking about the companies. And it's not very easy. I have been involved with a major transformation of the companies. And it's not really that easy if you're talking about the big corporations with a long history, the tradition. People are very much proud of working for that company. And they have this notion of my company is so and so and so. So if you try to go away from it, even though that may fit the original objective and philosophy of the company and keep up with the change in the market, in the world, they have a hard time accepting it. And so, I mean, as we often talk about discontinuous or disruptive innovation. And I hear that disruptive innovation doesn't happen, not because of the technology, but because of the mental mindset of the people, unless you can change the mindset. But I think in a way, COVID-19 may have triggered a lot of mindset change. And whether we can keep that is up to us. And one, I think, is important factor is whether we can empower younger generation to let them lead or let them figure out what kind of country they want to form, they want to build, what kind of work style, what kind of life they want to lead, because they are the ones who are going to live. I mean, I don't care about all those people who are baby boomers, including myself, because they're not going to be around. So, I mean, the younger people who have to live from now on have to lead and have to be able to design their own future. And the same thing was true with this climate change and all sorts of things. And that's why the teenagers and younger generation were leading. And what the older generation or the present leaders of today can do is just make sure that you empower, you support them in the way that they can lead and they can be responsible and they can take charge. And that's what I'm hoping.
Yes, yes, I as well. And lastly, I did want to touch on this one point, and it might also fit into what you've been saying very much. Well, it might be different. The LGBTQ plus community, right? I have my own. I have how I feel in my time in Japan. That community is addressed and not addressed. But I wanted to hear your thoughts on that and what's happening with that in terms of business too, obviously.
Yes. I think we tried to, as a part of this Davos Experience in Tokyo workshop, we did LGBTQ. We tried to do that because one of the companies sponsored the person wanted to do that. And that was about 5 years ago or so. And at that point in time, I thought LGBTQ is just too early. So people have no idea what it is. So let's make it sound much more broader and say, you have some experience of being excluded or do not join in this, in this group when you try to join the new group. How did you feel? So let's make the society where everybody can feel that they're included. And we did it that way. So that was before LGBTQ has become a much more, hot topic. Now I think more people are aware of it. More people. I think there are some areas in Tokyo that give the certificate, and I think we have an arrangement that the insurance money can go to people, and so I think we have come some way. And I went to this conference involving the diversity and inclusion a few years ago with high school kids as well, and high school kids say LGBTQ as if it's nothing new. So I think there may be, I think we are going to that direction. At least it's not something that you just don't talk about it. And I think
it's good to hear that, especially our young people in Japan are just, that's a community. That's one of our communities.
Right.
I'm very happy to hear that.
But I don't think oh, go ahead. We have anybody in the leadership position who say, I am LGBTQ or, and even in business. You have some, in the US, and everybody knows that. But I don't think we have that here. So in that sense, it's still the concept rather than the reality. Or we don't have specific examples of, oh, okay, that's what it is.
Well, because I was thinking of what you're talking about in terms of the necessity for diversity, the necessity for inclusion. You have to also be talking about this community, right?
Right,
That
yeah.
if we're talking about different perspectives, different backgrounds,
Mm-hmm.
that obviously includes the LGBTQ plus
Yes.
community, right? But one of the things that I've thought about a lot is where this change begins, right? Does it begin with our young people, which I hope it does, right? Or does real systemic change start in like the government, right? I believe in Japan, and I might be wrong about this, I don't think I am, that two people of the same gender still cannot marry in Japan. And I have to look at that to see if that has been changed.
That's what I understand legally.
And so that's what I'm thinking about, right? I mean, this was an issue, and still continues to be an issue everywhere. So what do you think is going to happen first? I don't think it needs to be an either or equation. It might be our young people and the government. Which side do you think is going to be the stronger force, if I could put it that way, in driving us forward to a point where we can really...
I think the younger people. Government usually is the follower, whatever happens. So they sort of admit, okay, this is what's going on, might as well change the rules or regulations. That's what happens. But I think overall, diversity in Japan is much narrower in terms of definition. So it doesn't include all sorts of things that you usually include, such as LGBTQ, sexual preference, and all sorts of things. And so that's part of the problem. So diversity, whenever people think about diversity, it's like women, it's nationality, that's it. And so they don't think about all these other things. And so that needs to change. But I think, suppose if we have a business leader, whom everybody knows, says, I'm a gay, what happens? I would be very interested, in Japan. I haven't come across with that yet.
That would be a very important moment in Japanese society. And I hope it comes sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
That's a very big issue. Well, Dr. Ishikura, thank you so much for making time for us. I know that you're always extremely busy. I really do encourage everyone watching the video to check out your website. I think it's www.yokoishikura.com. And in English, it'd be /English.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Is for people who would like to know, more about, your work and what you do, are there any other resources you'd recommend that they look at?
I think as long as you go to my website, that lists all those things like media and, the seminars and things like that. And I always post what's coming. So, you can take a look and join us. And I think that would be the best source.
I very much encourage everyone to do so. Yeah. And I'm looking forward to whenever things start to get to a place of normal, whatever permutation that takes.
Yeah.
And I hope to at some point, either virtually or in person, take part in one of your workshops. And so thank you very much for your time, and please do stay safe.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. I really enjoyed it.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Stay well and stay sane.